synagogue in Santa Rosa Road. But we'd like to make our communities better for everybody that we live with. In LA, we have a drug rehab that's been active for close to 30 years. And in 2009, we approached the commanding officer of the then Camarillo Police Department, Commander Steve DeCesare, and we said we would like to start doing prevention work in the community, not just treating people in rehab, but start when they're young to try to prevent the use. And we formed a group, parents, students, and law enforcement, very close relationship with our law enforcement, the school district. One of the things Saving Lives has successfully carried out in the community is working closely with our middle schools and our high schools. One of the things we would do is the after prom parties with the high schools, where they have a safe and sober after prom, where the kids after prom stay in one place and they don't go home to party. We're sponsors of that in Camarillo. We've been active in creating PSAs and in the Camarillo Fiesta and having essay contests in the schools, including having pledges from parents. As you'll hear also from our guest tonight about that. And finally, Saving Lives Camarillo. We have the PSA here. Mm-hmm. Could you play it, please? Okay. This is our Lockbox campaign, and the idea behind it is that we'd like to see every parent, Ventura County, 9% of the 9th graders and 40% of the 10th graders have used prescription medicine to get high. So we'd like to see every parent think of having a lockbox in their house. Just like you have a fire detector, if you had a gun, you probably want to secure it. Prescription drugs should be no different. We should keep it secure and out of the hands of minors. Okay. So this is playing at the Roxy Theater before the movie right now.
It was,
Want to dim the lights?
I don't know, it was in the medicine cabinet, and there, I didn't know there was some drinking. Is she gonna be okay?
This is why your granddad and I have a lockbox.
Okay, so this is a 30-second clip that plays in the movie theaters here in Camarillo. Short PSA, but to the point. Lockboxes can save lives. And we're working with the Ventura County Behavioral Health. We're contract with them as well as with ONDCP and the Community Drug-Free Communities Program. We awarded a grant in 2010 and then again in 2015. Many of you know we just had a terrible fire here and the shootings in Thousand Oaks. And while the fire might be out, there's still a fire burning. And the fire is the opioid crisis, alcohol, marijuana. And the problem with this type of fire is we don't see it overtly. It kind of is thrown under the rug. And we as citizens of Camarillo, parents, business people, law enforcement, teachers, it's our job to see to it that kids are safe. Doesn't matter if you have children or not. If you live here and you walk the streets of Camarillo, then we all live in this place together. Story would be is you have a boat and one person's in the boat drilling a hole under his seat. You ask the person, why are you drilling a hole under your seat? He says, I paid my ticket, please don't bother me. You say, but if you go down, we're all going down with you. And that's the attitude we'd like to take when it comes to the youth of Camarillo. If one kid is getting high on alcohol or marijuana or prescriptions, and we don't try to help them prevent it, we all get affected. We walk down the street and then there's a car accident. A kid gets into a car and we know what happens next. Right? Crime. We all get affected by crime. So really it's about everybody, the saying, if you see something, say something. I like to say, if you see something, do something. You see somebody, and I will share, Thanksgiving, we just finished with Thanksgiving. What a beautiful holiday. We have gratitude. Founding fathers came to this country. Gratitude to God, gratitude to our country, United States. We live here with gratitude, but at the same time, if you see someone that's willing to go into a bar and shoot down 11 souls, you see such evil, we have to react with kindness. And that's what I'd like to ask everyone tonight. Get involved with your community, even if you yourself don't have a problem in your family. Try to join the coalition. We meet the last Tuesday of the month at 5:30, 5800 Santa Rosa Road. And I'd like to ask you to join us at our coalition meetings and to try to be a part of the solution. Some people accept reality, and some people try to make a change. We're not going to save every kid, but if you save one life, you've saved the world. So that's what it's all about. And I thank our volunteers that are here today and that are part of the coalition and our executive leadership task force. I thank the Commander Murray from the Camarillo Police Department, who we work very close with, who comes to our coalition meetings here in Camarillo. Yossi Jacobowitz and David Press are on our leadership task force. And the volunteers that were here today to help out. And Yaakov, who's our interim coalition coordinator right now at the Saving Lives, for being involved here and really pulling a lot of things together. Also, I'd like to thank one of our co-sponsors, Dr. Adam Sherman, a family medicine practice in Oxnard, and for helping to sponsor today. And of course, the DFC support program, ONDCP, and SAMHSA. I would like to call upon people that we look very close with, county prevention, Mr. David Tovar, from Ventura County Prevention, Alcohol, and Prevention, to share a few words. And we're working on the special lockbox program with them, and maybe you can talk a little more about it.
Thank you, Rabbi. So my name is David Tovar. I work for Ventura County Behavioral Health. So we're alcohol, drug, and mental health services for the County of Ventura. I work within our prevention program. So we try and prevent these types of issues here in Ventura County. And what I want to draw your attention to first is looking in the back of the room, looking at 1 year in Ventura County. What happens with this opioid crisis? What's going on here in Ventura County? And Vic can talk about the law enforcement side, and the rabbi can talk about what's happening here in Camarillo. But this really does hit home. You know, in 1 year we have almost enough prescriptions for opioids for every single person here in Ventura County. 609,000 prescriptions. That's amazing. We only have 895,000 people here. In the controlled substances, we have well over 1 million. So prevention really, the way I look at it, it starts at home. It starts with each and every one of you. And you know, we put it in a medicine cabinet because that's where it starts. It starts with grabbing locks and making sure that you have that important conversation with your kids, with your grandkids, with your loved ones, about how they can stay safe, what they can do, what you can do. Whether that's locking up your prescription medications, whether it's talking to your physician about the medications that they're prescribing you and what the risks and dangers are. But really, at the end of the day, it's starting at home. It's making sure that you're talking to friends and family members about these issues. Because like that PSA showed, it can happen to anyone. It can happen anywhere. So thank you so much for having us. I know Vic is going to talk about our collaboration, what's going on elsewhere. But thank you so much for being here tonight and taking time for this.
Thank you, Dave. I'd like to invite the commander of Camarillo Police Department, we work very closely with, and who's been very busy lately, and unfortunately, but we should really just give a big hand to all our firemen and police from the police department for everything that they do to keep us safe. We appreciate it.
Well, good evening, everyone. It certainly is a pleasure to be here this evening. And, really just to echo the rabbi's sentiments, prevention really starts within our community, and it starts with our youth. And really, this coalition, it's amazing to see what they do with such a small group of people. If you can reach one kid, the mission is a success. But what I see going on in these meetings and with this outreach, within the communities, within the businesses, it's really quite inspiring and amazing. We have a huge problem. We see it every day in law enforcement, and Captain Fazio is certainly going to allude to that and go into a little bit more detail on the prevention side and what we're doing. But to see it, having almost 30 years in this business, to see where we're at today is really kind of amazing, and how the drug world has transformed into our youth and what they're willing to do and what they are doing in the confines of their own home with medicine chests, with prescriptions that are not disposed of properly. So really, it's a privilege for me and the Sheriff's Office and Camarillo PD to be part of the coalition with these projects, with the medicine chest lock boxes, with the community outreach, and really just doing what we can to get the word out to make this community and every other very safe. So I know we have a couple of speakers tonight, but I do want to introduce ours. And he won't like when I do this, but his resume is significant, and I think it's important sort of his qualifications and what he brings to the table in terms of his knowledge and the work that he's done. So before I ask him up here, Captain Vic Fazio, he has 24 years on the job. 17 of those years have been in narcotics. And really, Vic has been the architect for our pharmaceutical task force, where they have really taken investigations to a new level in terms of going after the dealers, going after the physicians, and really striking a chord and making a difference where it matters most on the street. He'll be able to talk a little bit more in detail about that. But again, with Vic's experience, it's quite significant. He has a bachelor's degree from UCLA in political science. He has a master's degree from Arizona State University in criminal justice, and he has a doctorate degree from USC. He is well versed, he is very committed, and he is extremely passionate about getting the word out and being a difference maker. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce Captain Vic Fazio.
So with that introduction, you're going to expect me to be articulate up here, which I'm usually not. But you're here tonight, I would suspect, because you understand that this crisis affects every single one of us. And if you are here tonight, you aren't probably here because this crisis has affected you in a profound personal way. You're going to hear a story in a little bit from someone who's paid the ultimate sacrifice of this crisis, the death of a family member. And we're all affected by this, whether you realize it or not, whether it's just simply because you've been a victim of a crime, you've been hit by a drug or drunk driver, you've had something stolen out of your vehicle, or you've suffered that tragedy of a family member dying from an overdose. We are all victims of this. And I want to remind everybody here of law enforcement's role in this. Because it seems like we've kind of moved to a thought of a universal victimization, a lack of personal accountability when you really look at it when it comes to this crisis. But at the same time, we have to understand that the addictions from these drugs are so powerful that people will do things that they never thought in a million years that they would do. And when you have an addiction cycle so deep that people would abandon their families, they'd abandon their own good sense, they would continue to use the drugs despite the harm that they're causing in their lives, it's something that we really need to pay attention to more than we already are. And law enforcement does have a role in that. We have a zero tolerance policy with the City of Camarillo Police Department and the Ventura County Sheriff's Office when it comes to possession, use, under the influence, sales, anything having to do with a prescription drug when it's obtained illegally, or with heroin when it's used or sold on the streets, and especially when it's sold where somebody dies as a result of that sale. And we believe in the theory of deterrence and the fact that we have a role to play by putting people in jail when they break the law. And even when our legislators don't have the political will to continue with an aggressive stance towards the law enforcement of drugs, we still do in Ventura County. And we also, though, understand that it's not law enforcement's ability to arrest our way out of this problem. Sure, you give me 100 cops, I could go in any community, we can solve the problem for the night, but it doesn't address the long-term effects of use and addiction that are going on in our communities and everywhere across this country. And I think Mr. Shapiro is going to speak to this and how this really hits home as far as, okay, we move past the arrest, what do we do for treatment? And better yet, how do we prevent this in the first place? Because it's always easier to say no than say never again. And any drug addict will tell you that. So we work very closely with every county agency and every city agency, every nonprofit, every for-profit, every private entity that we can in the county of Ventura and the city of Camarillo to deal with this problem. We work very closely with behavioral health, the Office of Education, public health, our medical examiner's office, community members, the hospitals. And we've come up with a multifaceted approach to this problem. And when you look at it, 2013 was our highest year for opioid overdoses in Ventura County. We had 93 souls lose their life because of this horrible problem. And we made a concerted effort in 2013 to attack this problem from every angle possible. And that included having behavioral health partner with the Office of Education to go out and reach students at a very early age. It included putting naloxone on the street so we could have that life-saving antidote for people that were at-risk heroin users. And we worked very hard for the 3 years to 2016, and we were able to lower our numbers to 56 overdose deaths in 2016 from opioids. And 56 is too many, one's too many. But we made positive strides. And then something hit us in 2017, which I'm sure you're aware of, and that's fentanyl. And this horrible, evil drug, very powerful drug, is being cut into our heroin supply. Counterfeit medication is made with fentanyl, and it's extremely deadly because only micrograms can kill you when you're talking about milligrams and grams and the other types of drugs with heroin and prescription drugs. So in 2017, we were back up to 92 overdose deaths, and that was shocking to us, and it was hurtful to us, but we recommitted ourselves to getting out and speaking with every single community group we could. And I'm shocked that this room isn't full and it's not standing room only, because it should be. It absolutely should be lined. People should be out the door banging to get in here to listen to the story that Mr. Shapiro is going to tell, because just because it happened to him doesn't mean it couldn't happen to every single person in this community or in this county, because it's not a moral failing on the part of society that this problem happened. And I'll just give you a brief history of how we came about this crisis, because it's always another drug crisis, because it seems like we fall trapped into this all the time. About 38 years ago, the pharmaceutical industry grabbed on to a study that was written. It wasn't even a study, but they called it a study. It was a 100-word letter to the New England Journal of Medicine by a doctor and his partner who said that opioids don't cause addiction. And it simply was that 4 in 11,000 people became addicted to opioids in a hospital setting. And Purdue Pharma and the other pharmaceutical companies jumped on board with this, and over the next 38 years, they've destroyed our nation because they used that as a backbone for selling their medication to physicians to tell them that it's okay to prescribe large amounts of opioids, and there is a no addiction problem, but in fact there very well is. So now we have the problem of shifting, now that we've clamped down on the prescription side of things with arresting physicians and holding drug companies accountable, to a shift to heroin. It's a natural transition. And heroin is just as not more deadly than the prescription medications are. And we have a shift from smoking heroin to injecting heroin. And that's why people overdose and die. It's because they're getting large amounts of opioids in a very short amount of time. And especially when we have people that get released from jail, because just as quickly as your tolerance can build up to this stuff is as quickly as you can lose that tolerance. And that's where our overdoses come from. So what I'd like to leave you with is this, is that your Sheriff's Department, your City of Camarillo Police Department is committed to doing whatever possible to work with what other agency, organization, group to lessen the harm caused by this and stamping out this evil crime, because that's what it is. Drugs are a criminal act, and we need to do everything in our power to make sure that it doesn't harm one more person. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Fazio. And now for the moment you've been waiting for. Internationally renowned litigator Robert Shapiro is a co-founder of RightCounsel.com. Robert Shapiro is also a co-founder of LegalZoom and a partner at Glazer, Well, Fink, Howard, Atkin, and Shapiro LLP. He has represented a number of high-profile corporations, including Rockstar Energy Drink, Diamond Resorts International, Steve Wynn, and Wynn Resorts Ltd., Canoe Express, as well as many celebrity clients. Mr. Shapiro, most famous trials include the defense of O.J. Simpson and Christian Brando. To date, Mr. Shapiro continues his practice as both a criminal and civil trial attorney. Mr. Shapiro received a business degree in finance from the University of California, Los Angeles in 1965 and obtained his law degree from Loyola Law School in 1968. Mr. Shapiro has been married for more than 40 years to his wife, Linnell, and has a son, Grant.
Got to a party. He had a couple of drink.
His other son, Brent, died of chemical dependency disease in 2005, prompting Mr. Shapiro to found the Brent Shapiro Foundation, a non-profit organization created to raise drug and alcohol awareness in the wake of this tragedy. Mr. Shapiro has authored 2 books, Search for Justice and Misconception. He also wrote a children's book on the negative effects of drug use, which is available free of charge to schools across the country. Additionally, he is a frequent contributor to op-ed pieces and legal articles. It's an honor and pleasure, a distinct honor and pleasure to have Mr. Shapiro here this evening, coming all the way to Camarillo. Please, a warm welcome for Mr. Robert Shapiro.
Interrupted by that brief video. Perhaps we can turn the lights down before I start and show that video. That night he had gone to a party. He had a couple of drinks and took a half ecstasy. They kept him alive on machines for the next day. The doctors called us in and told us that he was not going to recover, that it was irreversible. If there's anything that anybody can do to change the course of this dreaded disease, have the courage to talk about it. To talk to your friends about it. Don't be afraid. It's just better to talk than to come to a funeral and talk about it. My name is Robert Shapiro. This is my story. What's your story? Good evening. Let me turn the lights back on. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rabbi, for having me here. It's a pleasure to meet the distinguished members of the Sheriff's Department and law enforcement, and to spend a few moments with you talking about an epidemic that is sweeping this nation, that is unprecedented in the history of this country. 15 years, the United States fought a war in Vietnam, and 54,000 American soldiers were killed. Last year, 72,000 Americans died of drugs. Today I heard on the news that there was sad news from Afghanistan, that 3 American soldiers were killed in Afghanistan. Today 120 Americans died of drugs. The statistics are simply overwhelming. In Vietnam, people were marching in the streets because of the deaths. There's been protests, of course, in Afghanistan. These are wars that we couldn't win, and the war on drugs, as good as our friends in law enforcement are, we can't win this war with anything else but prevention. So how do we approach a country where 95% of all painkillers made for the world are used by Americans? Is it simply that we have more pain than anybody else in the world? Certainly not. So what are we dealing with when we talk about the drug epidemic and drug disease? We're talking about a disease, and it's a disease that affects the part of the brain that makes decisions. And once that decision-making part of the brain has been compromised, people will not make correct decisions. I'll give you a very, very simple analysis of what I'm talking about. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have seen people who, on occasion, have too much to drink. And you may go up to them and say, you know, you've had too much to drink, don't drive home. What's their response going to be? I'm fine. Okay, these are reasonable, intelligent people. Why are they saying that? Because that part of the brain has been compromised, and they have no ability to now make a correct and very simple decision. And so they will think that they are actually fine. Well, that's the same thing that happens with drugs and with people who unfortunately are addicted to drugs. So we're faced with a crisis of a disease that is not curable, much like other diseases, such as hypertension, such as asthma, things that can be treated but are not curable. The other thing that we have to understand about drug disease is that it is a treatable but recurring disease. And that is where the Brent Shapiro Foundation has tried to come up with an answer. And I believe we have the only program in the United States that is proven to be successful in preventing kids from using drugs. No matter how good law enforcement is, there is not a child in America who will not be exposed to drugs. Period. Just accept that as a fact. Starting at 10 or 11 years of age, they will all be tempted. So how do you prevent them from starting? It's important to start as early as possible. We know statistically that if we can keep kids from experimenting with alcohol or drugs before the age of 15, the chance of a lifelong problem goes down by 500 to 800%. Amazing statistics. So how do we prevent kids from, oh, just try this, you know, you may like it? We started with an idea. And the idea was that we found statistically that if you give an addict a reward, they will temporarily stop using drugs. So we thought, well, maybe this might work with kids. So we formed a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of America in perhaps the most difficult area, certainly in Los Angeles, in Boyle Heights. It's an area where there are gangs on every corner, liquor stores and drug dealers on every other corner. And we went there and we sent out vans, and we were able to close down 4 blocks, and we had a block party. We brought in food trucks, we brought in games, we brought in Ferris wheels, but we had a message to deliver. And that was, if you will sign up with your kids and sign a contract to let us test them on a random basis for alcohol and drugs, we'll give them a reward. We didn't know if this was going to work. Out of the families that came, we had 900 families show up. And of those 900 families, 25 walked up to us and said, we're signing up. Today in that facility, we have 1,500 kids. Those kids come after school to the Boys and Girls Club. We have our own director, we have our own protocol, our own program, and they learn about Brent's story. They learn about a successful kid from a well-versed family that grew up in a very, very nice neighborhood, grew up with good standards, but was born with ADD. And the first thing we learned about from a leading doctor in America was that kids with ADD have a propensity to become drug addicts. And that happened to be the case with Brent. So Brent went through school. He was one of the most popular kids around. Great athlete, was at USC on the dean's list, ready to graduate. Had been sober for 18 months. And he went to a party. And this was not a crazy wild party, it was a back to school party. And at this party, his girlfriend at the time said, you know, maybe you can just have a drink now and then. And so he broke his sobriety and had 2 shots of Jägermeister. And then they split a half of ecstasy. And he got violently ill. And rather than call the paramedics, they didn't want us to find out that he had broken his sobriety. And they said, just let him sleep it off. At 7 o'clock the next morning on Sunday, the phone rang, and it rang and it rang. And when that happens, you know the news is not good, and it wasn't. Brent was not breathing and he was turning blue. I said, how close are you to Cedars-Sinai? We're about 15 minutes away and we've called the paramedics. When I got there with my wife, before the paramedics, we knew for sure the news was not good. You have 5 to 6 minutes to resuscitate somebody. This was a simple, everyday, unfortunately, occurrence where somebody overdoses. But if you don't get immediate attention, you have no chance. And that's what happened with Brent. So we started this program for prevention. So how does it work? It's as simple as you could be. We take kids and we say, do you see football games? Do you see basketball games? Do you see baseball games? Are you idolizing any of these athletes? Well, they all do one thing in common. The same thing that law enforcement does. The same thing they do at Walmart, at every store in America. They test people for drugs. So if you came up to a child and said, you know, I think we should start testing you, what do you think the reaction would be?
No way. No way.
No way, they're going to yell, why are you picking on me? You don't trust me? Nobody else is doing this. That's why we do it in a group setting. So, the simple way that we do it is we do it with the Boys and Girls Club of America. Over the last 5 years, we've had 1,500 kids, almost on an annual basis, go through the program. We've had not one failed test. We now have 9 clubs across America. We have over 5,000 kids. We've had 1 child in Malibu test positive for marijuana. So we know that there is a solution. It's going to be changing the way society looks at raising kids. Just as kids get vaccinated, just as you get in a car, you put on a seatbelt, just as if you get on a bicycle, you should put on a helmet. You test on a regular basis. How would you do this in a community? You want to be in AYSO soccer? The whole team will test. You want to be in after-school ballet? The whole ballet class will test. You can do this in individual groups. What does the testing consist of? Very simple. It's a swab under the tongue, put it back into the container, wait 2 minutes, and you'll know the results. So what kind of rewards do we give these young kids? If they stay in the program and graduate as a sober high school student, they are eligible for a college scholarship. This year, we gave, from just East LA alone, 2 full college scholarships. Do you remember, Ellie, where the kids are going? One is going to Caltech, and one is going to the University of California at Irvine. And so, these are for the underserved, underprivileged kids. What is the way to do this with people who may be more affluent? I think the same thing. You want to be on a computer, you want to get an iPad, you want an iPhone, you want to get a car. All these things are going to be ways to reward your kids to make sure that when they test, they know there's a reason they're doing it. So, just as you heard from the officer, we can't arrest our way out of this problem. We can't build a wall around this problem because, unfortunately, the only way to deal with this is not on the supply side, but on the demand side. If we have our kids know what happened to Brent, that it can happen to anyone, that these are dire, dire consequences, and that if we educate our kids, let them know about the dangers of this addictive disease, the consequences of it, then we have a solution. And that solution, I believe, will change the course of the way we deal with drugs in America. I want to thank you very much. I'll be available to answer some questions. I see some hands up already. Yes, ma'am.
Do they deal with any gangs? Try and infiltrate gangs or talk to them, teach them some sense, or?
We haven't been dealing with gangs. We have we're competing with gangs. And what we're doing is saying, you know, we had this summer, I think, about 160 kids we took from East LA to Malibu to teach them how to surf. Half of them had never been to the ocean and none of them had ever surfed. They went back to their communities and they talked to the people that you're talking about because they're all in the same environment. And, well, what did you do over the weekend? Oh, you know, I had a bag of Cheetos and, you know, I got stoned and we hung out, we had a great time. What did you do? Well, I went with Brent's club, I went to Malibu, we got surfing lessons, we got backpacks, we got hats, we got all kinds of things. It was just terrific. So I think that's the answer, is to let kids know that, number one, there's no shame in being tested. In fact, it's something that we have to come up with programs in individual areas to ensure that this will not start. And our slogan is simple: be smart, don't start. Do we have any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What happens when they test positive?
Well, we've only had one, as I said. In the last 5 years, with over 5,000 kids testing in this program, we have clubs in East LA, we have clubs in Monterey Park, we have a club in Oakland, we have a club in the Bronx in New York, we just opened a club with Michael Jordan in Chicago, and we're expanding around the country and getting sponsorships with major sports franchises. The Dodgers are sponsoring our club in East LA. The New York Giants sponsor a club in New York. The Chicago Bulls and White Sox are sponsoring our club in Chicago. And so if somebody does test positive, we have trained our people to counsel the kids, not to punish them, and to bring them back into the program. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Do you make presentations in public schools to all, like the entire student body before they're part of your organization?
So the question is, do we make presentations in public schools? I've done it in one charter school. We're available to do it anywhere. Schools don't want to hear about it.
What? That doesn't make sense.
Because they don't believe there's a problem at their school. Just like, okay, just as the sheriff said, this room should be packed. People are not here. Why are they not here? We don't have a problem. Why would we want to hear about it? It doesn't happen in my house. I've heard this over and over again. We cannot get this program into schools as much as I've tried. Absolutely, totally negative across the board, except one school in the valley.
Which one?
Trying to think of, it was about a year and a half ago, and I don't.
High school?
Yeah, it was a high school, a charter high school.
El Camino?
I'm not sure if that was, but it was one school they invited us to, and overwhelming reception. But we'd love to do more. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm a student at Camarillo High School, and I think that this is just like so timely and crucial for our high school. And so you guys do presentations, or what's your?
I will come out if you have a high school and you want me to come out and talk to a student body, talk to a group of kids. I'll be there.
What's your vision? Do you think that it's feasible in the future to have drug testing for high school athletic teams?
My vision is that every activity involving athletics at a minimum should be mandatory testing, without a question, But that's a ways off. But you know, look at why does every professional sports team, why does every boxer, every person involved in business, every person working for any major chain, they're all testing? Why are we not testing our kids? It's the only way we can be sure that they are not using drugs. There is no other way. The test costs $6. It's done by DNA. The results are immediate, and we can get the cost way down. Yes, sir.
Yeah, how frequent are the tests?
They're done on a random basis, and we try to do it like every 2 or 3 weeks. at every club with the kids. Yes, ma'am.
I think one reason, an answer to why aren't they doing it, is ACLU.
Well, that may be the
They're not
reason.
good, you know, everybody's rights, and you're imposing on their rights.
I haven't come up against that with any of our clubs. I mean,
But you're talking about why isn't it done in the schools?
oh, in the school, the schools. I haven't heard that. I've just seen that the school boards don't want to deal with the issue. They're afraid of liability. They come up with a million different answers. So this has, just like most things, this has to be done in the private sector. But there are enough areas in the private sector where all of our kids are involved that we can require testing if they want to stay in that program. So, I mean, it's just not that complicated. Yes, sir.
I have a question about what is the precursor to begin drugs in the first place? What is it?
What is the precursor to begin drugs in the impetus? Every person I've ever talked to that is in drug rehabilitation tells me the same thing. They started with marijuana, and that marijuana is a gateway drug across the board.
They're not doing it, they're doing it intentionally to see how marijuana feels, and then you go on to something else.
That's exactly what happens. According to the recent studies at UCLA, 50% of drug addiction is genetic. The other 50% is acquired. And it can happen at any age. I mean, you know, we're focusing on youth, but we know there's a major epidemic with people around the country, and primarily middle-aged women.
Marijuana is legalized in some states.
Marijuana is legalized in some form in, I believe, now 28 states. And it will be legalized in almost every state in America shortly. It's legalized in Canada, and it's here to stay, and there's nothing we're going to do about it. And the real danger with marijuana, in my view, is edibles. And if there's one thing that the government should crack down on, is a piece of candy that you can give to a kid, and 2 hours later he's in space and doesn't know why. Anyway, yes?
Make a comment on see where you guys, as another angle to approach this problem, I'm going to point to the doctors and Big Pharma. As Big Pharma is 6 times bigger than the largest Fortune 500 company, and I think the access that's created by that is another gateway or problem.
Well, there's no question that starting in the 1980s, the American doctors got together and they concluded that no American should be in pain. And so Big Pharma's came right at them and said, we've got it. We've got something that for stage 4 cancer will take people out of pain. And now you have dentists giving it for people with a toothache. So you're absolutely correct. I want to thank you so much for your attendance, for listening to me, and hopefully that we have given you some ideas as to how to deal with this epidemic and prevent it. You can go to BrentShapiro.org, see what we're doing. Ellie, our director, has some forms if you want to try it, if you have kids at home, to sign a contract with your kids. We also have our Save a Life program where we tell somebody, carry a card, and it's real simple. Here are some symptoms. If you see it, dial 911. People somehow are reluctant to call 911 unless they think it's a dire emergency. Well, guess what? It's a dire emergency. And I'll leave you with this one thought. If any of you think you know somebody who has a problem, you're right. Thank you. Thanks very much.
We had a contest in Camarillo when the high school students. It was in 9th to 12th grade contest. Thank you very much for coming here for the inspirational words. And basically, it was to write an essay, and we have our 3 winners that we have picked based on their essays. And maybe Mr. Shapiro can present the prizes if they're here. If not, we'll have it saved for them later on. We also have a drawing for 3 lock boxes. So if they're here, please come up and hear your name.
Well, if these are children, we don't see any children here, so.
High school.
High school. Okay. Are there any high school students here?
Okay.
We have one.
Sit
down. Give me your name and I'll tell you if you're one of the Okay, we want to congratulate Heidi Jensen. We want to congratulate Allison, is this Lucas, and Brittany Lamb.
I know all of those people.
Okay. So let's give them a round of applause. Are you one of them?
My friend's Heidi.
And accepting this wonderful award, you are?
Allison.
Allison. Well, thank you so much for coming.
She won the first place. Can we read some of her essay?
Okay. The happiness cure. The ability to express happiness is a beautiful and generous gift endowed to us from the kind hand of Mother Nature. Our brains are so widely complicated that scientists are still appalled by the extent to which the complexities of happiness can be explained in infinite arrangements and symphonies of chemistry, chemicals, hormones, and receptors. There is an undoubtedly remarkable magic to the science and humanity of happiness. And she closes with, together my friends, family, and I, we've a beautiful story of grace and blessing brimmed with naturally derived happiness. We remind each other that we are not alone and our struggles are a natural part of life. To know happiness is to acknowledge sadness, but we still have the bravery to move forward. Be happy, think positive, and enjoy the sublime enchantment that comes with being a part of human life. How wonderful. Wow.
Let's get a picture here with Shapiro and the first place prize.
Congratulations. That was just beautiful. Wow.
I'm a tall.
Yeah. I would imagine where.
I'm applying to Dartmouth. Yeah, that's great.
Can we smile for a second here? Okay.
So let me ask you a question. Let me just ask you a question. So you heard what we're doing about this program. How do you think this would be received by kids that you know?
By kids that I know, especially, and I know the other essay winner, Heidi Jensen, personally, and we've just had, in my small discussion with friends, because we see a lot of these problems occur every single day, especially in Camarillo. There's a lot of, vaping, marijuana usage. I think that the way that it would be received would be a bit of a culture shock, just because, like you said, a lot of people aren't ready to accept the fact that it's happening in their neighborhood, in their household, by their own children. And I think that it's gonna be a really tough thing to approach, but it's worth saving kids' lives.
Well, that's why we start at 11 years of age. Before kids become so obnoxious and rambunctious that they won't listen to anyone, and that they know more than anybody else. But at 11, they become very, very much engaged with this. They become very proud of the fact, and they test in groups. they applaud one another, they high-five one another, and they get a reward, and their life is changed, not only in a way that they will be drug-free, but they are getting education and moving on to college that for most of them would never be available.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Congratulations. Did you get your winning prize for $300? Thank you. Congratulations. We have 3 winners of lock boxes. We had a raffle. First winner, Catherine Wolfson. She's here. Catherine. These are little lock boxes you could put in your medicine cabinet, and anytime you get painkillers, opioids, you just store them there. And with legalized marijuana, I have a lockbox in my house. I don't use it, I don't have marijuana, but even for alcohol, I put it in a lockbox and I know that it's safe for my children. So this is so easy to find on Amazon, $40. You get your own lockbox, sticks right into the cabinet, in your existing medicine cabinet, 2 screws in the back, and there you have it with a key. The other winner for a lockbox is, one of our frequent members, Phil Barton. Thank you, Phil. She's well deserving. She attends lots of the meetings. Congratulations. When your grandkids come over. And then another member, Mr. Moshe Schneider, wins. Dr. Schneider wins a lockbox. Thank you. And he was the one that came up with the saying at one of our coalition meetings, better in the safe than sorry. How do you like that? Better in the safe than sorry. That's Miss Dr. Schneider. Wonderful. He deserves that because that was on our PSA. So thank you very much for coming this evening. I want to remind you that we're not going to have one in December, but the last Tuesday of every month at the Chabad, 5800 Santa Rosa, 5:30 to 6:30, we have our coalition meetings. Please join us. It's a great way to get involved with the community and make a difference. I really thank Mr. Shapiro for coming all the way out here, and Ellie for being here, and the great work they're doing. And perhaps that's something that our coalition wants to talk about. But the random drug testing, that's maybe something. I want to thank all our coalition members, Andrew and Katie there, that volunteer here today to help us. And all of you for coming, Phil, Suzanne, and Dr. Schneider. Thank you all for being here today. And the good thing is, it's on video. We're going to make sure that this video gets out there, and we're going to publicize it, that many people that are afraid of that stigma because of if they come to an evening about prevention that might mean something. We're going to make sure we go to them, to their homes, and get the message out there because it's so important. So thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Rabbi.